Hi everyone, and here's a new, amazingly low budget lens from Yongnuo, which has just hit the eBay. The Yongnuo 85mm f1.8. They've also launched a 100mm f2 lens, but I'll just be testing this 85mm version. It's designed for full-frame or Aps-C digital SLR cameras, or mirrorless cameras if you're using an adapter, but I ran into some problems on mirrorless which I'll talk about in a minute. Any lens in the world can be used for portrait pictures, but an 85mm f1.8 lens gives you the really nice short telephoto focal length and wide aperture to make your subjects really stand out in portrait pictures or just in everyday shooting. If you're using an Aps-C camera, then the focal length is about 135mm, so your reach is a lot longer and your background will be quite compressed. The cheapest fast 85mm lens on the market with an autofocus system for Canon users was the Canon 85mm f1.8 EOS M, a very sharp little lens that currently costs £340 or about $400 US. This new offering from Chinese manufacturer Yongnuo is available on eBay for only £160 or about $200 US, less than half the price. If the lens's optics are any good, then this could be the bargain of the century, really. It could really open up the world of portrait photography to beginner photographers or anyone else on a low budget. It took 10 days to get to me from China after I bought it, and I've been having a good play around with it. The build quality of this lens is actually quite good, although there are some important functional issues to report. The body of the lens is based on a metal lens mount with electronic connections for full camera control, including EXIF information. It turns into fairly cheap plastic below the focus ring, but above the focus ring, everything is made of metal, including the filter thread, so in that way, the build quality is pretty good. The focus ring is rubberized, and surprisingly, the lens features full-time manual focus, so you can safely turn that focus ring whether you're in manual focus mode or not. It's not a very smooth focus ring to turn, feeling a bit scratchy, but it is precise, and that's the main thing. Manual focusing is not a problem. The autofocus motor is noisy and not very fast. For comparison, here's the Canon 85mm lens. Well, what do you expect, I suppose, for a lens at this price point? Let's talk about autofocus accuracy, because it was a mixture of pleasure and pain here. When shooting with a digital SLR and through the viewfinder, I'm pleased to say that the autofocus system was surprisingly accurate. I did some special tests and it pretty much nailed focus about 95% of the time, even shooting wide open at f1.8. That's more accurate than Sigma's new 85mm art lens, which I've been testing at the same time. However, in live view mode or in video mode, the lens struggled a bit and mostly failed to focus accurately, which is unusual. That happened in my tests on a Canon 6D and EOS M3 camera with adapter. So if you like to use live view mode on your camera, you should get used to focusing manually with this lens, which admittedly isn't really too hard. Apart from that, the lens worked absolutely great on my digital SLR, a Canon 6D. However, there were severe problems when I used it with an adapter on my Canon EOS M3. There were autofocus issues, and if you tried to stop the lens's aperture down further than f2.8, the aperture system wouldn't work properly, and sometimes the whole camera would just lock up. Here you can see it's locked up with the 8-bladed aperture mechanism on display. I used a third-party adapter to get the lens onto the camera, but I very strongly doubt that that was the problem, as it's never caused issues for any other lens I've tried. So, if you plan to use this on a mirrorless camera with an adapter, you might have some real problems, and so I only recommend using this lens with a digital SLR. My copy of the lens came with a special case which is of a decent quality, and it also comes with a very handy lens hood based on the Canon design, which snaps on and you can twirl it around. So if you're planning to use it on a digital SLR camera and not mirrorless, then it has very good build quality for the price you have to pay, I think. Alright, let's see about image quality. I'll compare it side by side with the Canon 85mm f1.8 EOS M, which should be quite a challenge for the Yongnuo lens, and firstly on a full frame camera, my 20 megapixel Canon 6D. In the middle of the image at f1.8, both lenses are resolving very well with good contrast but a lot of purple fringing. Both lenses have quite neutral colours. Over in the corners, the Yongnuo lens is a bit softer, whereas the Canon lens stays sharp. At f2.8, the purple fringing is gone from both lenses, and the Yongnuo is fairly sharp now, and at f4, there's no longer really a difference. Even when both lenses are stopped down to f16, they remain really sharp. So honestly, I was quite impressed with the Yongnuo. Unsurprisingly, it can't match the far more expensive Canon equivalent at wide apertures, but actually it is still a very sharp lens, and its picture quality at f1.8 is more than good enough. It's just a shame both lenses show so much purple fringing. Well, now onto Aps-C. As I've mentioned, my little 24 megapixel Canon EOS M3 did not appreciate having the Yongnuo lens attached to it, but I managed to get a couple of test pictures. At f1.8, the lens is a touch soft in the middle, and the Canon equivalent just a touch sharper, and both have some real purple fringing demons. Over in the corners, both lenses are worse, and the Canon lens pulls ahead a little more. At f2.8 though, we see real improvements in both lenses in the corners, and a very good picture quality back in the middle. And that's all you're getting on Aps-C, I'm afraid. The aperture wouldn't stop down any darker than that on a Yongnuo lens. If it could have been stopped down further, I'd imagine the lens would be pretty sharp. I would say the lens is quite usable on Aps-C, but don't expect wonders. Let's see now about vignetting and distortion on a full frame camera. They're not a problem on Aps-C. The lens displays a tiny bit of pincushion distortion on full frame, nothing to worry about really, it'll just make your subject look a bit thinner. At f1.8 the corners are a bit dark, but vignetting isn't really too bad, and stop down to f2.8 and it's almost gone away. The lens can focus as closely as about 85 centimeters. Close-up image quality remains quite good at f1.8, and at f2.8 it's perfectly sharp. And now, work against bright lights. We see flaring. We see a serious loss of contrast. A real weakness for this lens, make sure you use the hood. And finally, bokeh. This lens can of course give you very out of focus backgrounds, and on the whole those backgrounds look lovely and smooth, a match for the competing Canon lens. All in all, despite its obvious problems on my mirrorless camera, for owners of digital SLR cameras, the Yongnuo 85mm f1.8 is a nice little investment. It's pretty sharp, has an autofocus system that works well and accurately, so long as you focus through the viewfinder. It gives you nice bokeh, its build quality is good. Its image quality won't blow you away on a high-resolution Aps-C camera, but frankly, for £160, this thing on a whole is a really good deal, if you're willing to overlook its little issues and quirks. Well done Yongnuo, your lenses are definitely improving.